and welcome to another super speedy wrap-up video. June was the month of Whatever You Want-a-thon, which was an amazing readathon. Spread the whole of the month. I have read so many books because of this readathon. This is hosted by Maddie from Book Browsing Blog, and I just had the best time. I was on Team Comrades of Chaos, so every book that I've read here is going to be contributing to that team's points, and we will be finding out who wins very shortly, I think. So, without further ado, here is the 10 books I managed to read in June. Much more than I've read in the previous few months, I think, because I gave myself this 10 book pledge. I wanted to be able to hit that 14 Comrades of Chaos. Our team colour is pink, so any books here you see that are pink got me a couple of extra points. So there's lots of, like, the whole readathon was very point based, like there's lots of different things going on in terms of you can get points for certain prompts, you can get points if you've read like a host's favourite or an LGBT book, so lots of those different things contribute, but here's the 10 books I read in June. Also, if you're new to super speedy wrap-ups, I basically wrap up the book very quickly. We don't go into too much around what the book is about and stuff. I just give you my quick thoughts and feelings as I throw it at myself, because basically I used to really dislike filming wrap-ups and how long they took, so I decided that I would do my own little quick speedy version, so that's what this is. First up, we have Bookishly Ever After by Lucy Powery. This is book 3 in the Paper and Hearts trilogy. Tis the last book. We follow Ed in this book, who is working in a bookshop. We also follow the rest of the Paper and Hearts Society too, but this really does centre around Ed. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. As always with this series, I really enjoy the way that Lucy explores actual teenagers' lives and the ins and outs of what they're experiencing, because I feel like with YA, a lot of it can be seen as like they're teen, but they are acting so much older, whereas these kids actually feel like kids and teenagers, and just, it felt very real, very true, and I love how cute and wholesome these books are, so I really enjoyed this one. As I said, 4 out of 5 stars. Sad this series is over, but if you want a really lovely series to get stuck into, I would very highly advise this one for contemporary YA. Then I read When You Get the Chance by Tom Ryan and Robin Stevenson. This is co-authored and like code narrative, so we see 2 different cousins who haven't seen each other for a very long time due to like a family dispute that they don't really understand, but they're all clubbing together to clear out a cabin for their grandma because their granddad's passed away, and end up getting left in this cabin and escaping to go to Pride in Toronto. So I feel like that was a big information dump, but this basically follows the relationship between the cousins, but also their own relationships that they're potentially trying to form with people, or trying to get over with people, or trying to understand as well. I really enjoyed this one. I enjoyed seeing the culture of Toronto as well. I have visited Toronto, so it was quite nice to read about somewhere I had been and could vaguely envision. Pride in Toronto sounds amazing. It made me crave for those kind of things without coronavirus like having its claws stuck into things. I did enjoy this one, but I wasn't completely swept away. My main flaws would be that the characters were both, in my opinion, unlikable. There was traits of them that were unlikable. The whole characters weren't altogether unlikable, but there were certain aspects of them that I didn't like, and you saw them from each other's perspectives and you saw them from their own perspectives, and it felt like I was getting annoyed with the characters. So for that reason, I couldn't give it a 4-star, but I gave it 3.5. Next up is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I don't know why I waited so long to read this book, because I absolutely adored it. I actually listened to this one as an audiobook on SCRIBD. It's a first-person narrative, so it really felt like much more personal as an audiobook, like diary entries, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. We follow Felix, who is going on a journey to find out why, or to find out if they can be loved, because so far they haven't really experienced that kind of a feeling and they're wondering if it's actually possible. But also they're going through a struggle with their own identity and who they actually are. But this book is not necessarily coming of age, but like a coming of identity type of book, and it felt very powerful, very emotional, and I really, really liked this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have got Punching the Air by another dual author duo. This is by E.B. Zaboy and Yousef Salaam. This is told in verse and is absolutely amazing. It follows our main character who's been wrongfully committed of a crime, and his experiences in prison with the other people, and also the knowledge that he hasn't committed this crime, and all of this coming together to make a really poignant story that is also written by a man who has experienced, or partially written by a man because it's dual authored, written by a man who's experienced these things himself as well. So you definitely get that personal touch in there, and I just thought that that completely shone through, particularly in the way that this is told in verse. It allows the narrative to feel so much more of a personal connection, and generally I loved it. It's another 4-star read. There's a lot of those this month. If you can hear that noise, it is indeed a man with a leaf blower outside my flat as I start to film, of course. But alas, we continue. I then read The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I have recently read One by One by Ruth Ware and loved it. Probably one of the best thrillers I've ever read. So I had to read more by her. This is another wrongfully convicted crime story. It is following a nanny who we see is in jail at the start of this book, following the death of one of the children in her care, and she then tells the story via one very, very long letter to someone she is hoping will represent her as a lawyer. So we get that story through her perspective there. Now, I kind of got lost in the middle of this as to whether it was actually meant to be some kind of paranormal haunted-esque story, because there was a lot of that in there as well. Oh my gosh, that is such a loud leaf blower. What leaves are there to blow? We're gonna push through. Okay, he keeps starting and stopping. Anyway, so we are in the middle of this thrillery situation, but there is like this haunted element to it as well, which was giving me goosebumps. This completely creeped me out. I felt very gripped. I wanted to know what was happening at the end. I have to say the last like 20 pages or so were not quite what I'd hoped, but still really, really good fun. Definitely a good thriller, and definitely had that good element of hauntings, but I won't say any more on that because I don't want to give any spoilers. So I gave this one another 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read a historical fiction, which is Dangerous Women by Hope Adams. This is another one about people convicted of crimes, but these ones aren't wrongfully convicted. There is 180 women on a ship heading for Australia in the 1800s, and we follow them on that ship, but there has been a murder, and this is a whodunit. This one was slow. I expected this to be so much better than it was. I thought this was going to be like a really feminist, empowering, thrillery mystery whodunit, but my god, it was slow. I thought there was going to be a lot more to it, I really did, but I think it felt very isolated because it was just set on a ship, and it just felt like it was really lacking something, yet the length of it was long. So this one definitely did disappoint me, unfortunately, but I still gave it 3 out of 5 stars. So I still enjoyed it, but it just left a little for me to be desperately wanting more of, but not in a good way. Like, I just think it didn't give me enough for me to feel hooked and gripped. I just didn't really care about the characters. I didn't really know the characters. There were so many that at times it did make it a little bit hard to really empathise with any of them. And I just felt like the murder, I didn't really care who did it, basically. So yeah, 3 out of 5 stars for this one. Then I read another thrillery murdery book, which is the Decagon House Murders by Yukito Ayatsuji. This one, much better. This is not a retelling, but inspired by Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. It kind of is a retelling, but it literally references that book in this book, so there's that meta level as well. But it follows a group of people who are on an island, and it's completely isolated, and naturally some deaths start happening, and it's like, who's done it? And it does kind of follow people that are really into the murder mystery literature as well, so it's almost a book about books too. I didn't really know much about this one before I picked it off of a shelf. I'd never seen it before, so I didn't know anything about it. I just literally saw the spine and thought, yeah, I'm having that. But apparently it's a Japanese cult classic. Was it? Yeah, the Japanese cult classic mystery. So amazing. This was translated fiction as well, so that's another one of my translated fiction master list that is very slowly growing. I really liked this. I felt gripped. I felt compelled to find out what was happening, and for the last 150 pages or so, I literally couldn't put it down, so it did its job very well, and therefore it got a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read The Henna Wars by Adiba Jagirda. This is a YA contemporary that's been sat on my shelves for a long time, and I'm really glad I have read it now. I actually read this one in a day, so I really enjoyed it. Very easy style, very cute and wholesome, but also had a little bit of drama mixed in there. It is about 2 girls who are opposing against each other in this school competition where they have to become entrepreneurs, and they both do the same henna business. Well, not the same business, but businesses offering the same thing, and they have to compete against each other to win. But there's also this romance in there that the main character's parents have forbidden and said she can be anyone she wants, but she cannot be a lesbian. So it's also about that story as well. And I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I felt like I cared about the characters. I wanted to see them succeed. It was cute and fluffy and what you want from a YA contemporary romance. It ticked all the boxes, and it's all pink. If you remember me saying Comrades of Chaos, our colour is pink, this was perfect. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. I then read or reread The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. This was my Patreon book club for May and June, so I finished this one one day before the end of the month, so cutting it a little fine, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. I deliberately bought this edition to annotate, and annotate I have done. This is a mystery book about books. It follows our main character who is a child at the start of the book and an adult at the end, and he has this book that he cannot find any information about the author of, and he's just fascinated to learn more. So he goes on a journey to find out as much as he possibly can about it, and this book details that mystery. I did enjoy it more the first time, but it is still a favourite read. I really enjoy the writing and the whimsical nature of the way the author thinks about his descriptions of things, but also at the heart of this is a real passion for books, and there's so many beautiful lines that credit that, so I love it for that reason. I did give it 4 out of 5 stars rather than 5. I still love it. It's fantastic. I think it just didn't quite keep me as gripped this time around because I read it throughout the whole month rather than just consecutively in one reading, not one session or sitting, but like my battery died, but I was just saying that I read other books in between reading this, so I think that broke up the experience for me and meant that I wasn't quite as in the world as I'd hoped I'd have been, but I'm really glad that I picked this as my Patreon book club pick because now more people have read it. And lastly, coming on in as my 10th book of the month, sliding on in there, it should have been another book, but I didn't want to rush finishing it, so that'll be in my July wrap up. But it is Fence Volume 3. I just finished this one on the last day of the month, and yeah, this is my 10th book. I mean, was it a quick read? Yes. Did I enjoy it? Yes. But it's still my 10th book, so I'm claiming it. We had to pledge with this readathon how many books you want to read at the start of the month, so I said I was going to read 10. And I could have finished my current read on the last day of the month, but I didn't want to feel like I had to really, really rush it and not properly appreciate the book, so I went with this one instead. This is by a couple of people. It is by C.S. Passat, Johanna the Mad, and Joanna Lafuente. So I really enjoyed this one. This one's actually my favourite so far of the series. This is all about fencing and people trying to get on the fencing team at their school, but each book is like a different stage of trying to get onto this fencing team, so it is definitely slow burn, like it's not going to go anywhere in a hurry, but I really enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, which I think is more than I've given the other ones, and I'm proud of myself for actually sticking with the graphic novel series because this rarely happens with me, but I'm liking this one and I can't wait to see where volume 4 goes. So those are all of the books I read in June. I'm noticing how shiny my ring light is making me right now. Oh well. So those are all my books that I read in June. This is the wrap up for Whatever You Want-a-thon. I have completed Whatever You Want-a-thon. I am, is it a mage that I've reached the level of? I don't know, I've read 10 books. I'm really proud of myself. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a thumbs up, comment down below how many books you managed to read in June, and subscribe to see more of my face on your feed. If you'd like any extra content from me, including podcasts, reading vlogs, behind the scenes stuff, I do have a Patreon link down below, and every single person that subscribes to that or signs up, whatever the correct wording is, it means the absolute world to me. It gets me one step closer to living my dream, and I couldn't be more grateful. So thank you guys so much for watching. Keep smiling and stay positive.